Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm really happy to be here. I'm really happy to talk about what I think is important for Ethereum and how Ethereum is going to make it and become great again. So I'm Zach, I'm the CEO of Aztec. We are a privacy-first layer 2 for Ethereum. Effectively, we want to recreate the smart contract ecosystem of Ethereum, but in a way where you have private data baked into the protocol. So you can write smart contracts that operate on private information, and that is all secured. It's all encrypted, but you can still verifiably know facts about that data inside a smart contract. So I think, we're in a bit of an interesting situation. In my country, we'd say this is a bit of a tricky situation in terms of both the Ethereum network, Web3 in general, perhaps even the entire global situation. And I think one of the root causes of this is that the information age that we live in, with the rise of the internet, has brought a phenomenal amount of prosperity and growth and opportunities to the world, but it has come with some very corrosive costs to society, particularly the erosion of trust. Nowadays, when you're interacting online, you don't know if you're interacting with real human beings, or if they have hidden agendas, or if you're interacting with bots or AI. And it goes deeper than that to the fundamental business model of the internet is based around advertising, where you as a user are not really the customer, you're the product being sold to advertisers. And so the content that you're being fed is not necessarily in your interests. Your values, your beliefs, your ideals, they don't matter. The only thing that matters is how much attention an application can acquire from you and how much data they can harvest from you. And I think that we need new information networks to bring back that trust that binds humanity together, this network of obligations and responsibilities that we all hold each other to. And I think blockchain is the key. And within that, privacy is required to fully unlock. So I've been doing this for 8 years now, talking about privacy for 8 years, and it's always very challenging to communicate to people, why is privacy important in a blockchain? Hell, why is blockchain important in general? And the way I think about it is that blockchain is a new information network that is increasing society's communication complexity. And what do I mean by that? So I want to give an example. Imagine congratulations, you have a time machine, and you've traveled back to the Stone Age, the Paleolithic, and you find a hunter-gatherer tribe. You know, you win their confidence, become friends with them, maybe you're roving around together, sitting by a campfire under a starry night, and then you go to the elders in the tribe and you go, hey, would you like to buy a road? And if you did this, they would look at you like you were crazy and go, well, what's a road? And you would be like, it's great, roads are amazing. They allow you to go from one place to another place really quickly. And they might look at you and they would be confused and they would ask you, can I bring the road with me? To which you would say, no, that's not how roads work. And for them, a road would be completely pointless, because if you're a hunter-gatherer society, you deplete the local area you're existing in of resources, and then you move on to another area and harvest its resources, because you have no ability to grow crops, to cultivate agriculture. And so being able to just go from two fixed places, back and forth, is completely useless. And why do I bring this up? Roads are the OG original information network. As in, if you want to get information from one place to another, you write it down, you give it to a messenger, they get on a horse and they travel down a road. And you go back far enough back in time, and even that concept is weird and radical and hard to wrap one's head around. And we're existing in a similar paradigm with blockchains today, because our entire world is built around this understanding and acceptance of financial intermediaries and data custodians. You don't expect to be able to interact financially with random arbitrary people without having to get some kind of middleman involved. You don't expect to be able to possess a bank account without the institution of a bank telling you what your account balance is. And so when we are trying to, within the Web3 community, within Ethereum, trying to build these new financial systems, this new concept of money, where you have now programmable digital money, where you get to define the rules around how it gets traded, transferred, settled between counterparties, and you don't need middlemen, decentralized finance. It's weird, it's radical, hard to understand. And then privacy comes into the mix. And so privacy is, I'm going to get into a little bit about why privacy is the foundational importance of that, but let's say you have these, so what do I mean when I'm saying we're building a new information network? As in, it's hard to create, it's the chicken and egg problem. It's hard to create something and build an ecosystem around something that doesn't yet already exist. I'll give some basic, an example which I think is very telling, but also a little bit silly. So, they say that, I don't know if this is the case in Korea, but in the West, they say that your average man thinks about the Roman Empire 6 times a day. I don't know what it'll be in Korea. Maybe the Sejong the Great. I'm not pronouncing it very well, but so I'm gonna talk about that for a little bit because it'll be relevant. So let's go back to the original Athenian city-state democracy, right? Arguably the invention of the democratic system that our societies are based around today. This is here's a question: why didn't it scale? As in, why did you only have isolated little city-states that had these democratic systems, more or less, consensus-based societies? But they're all fighting with each other and warring with each other. They couldn't get along, they couldn't collaborate, they couldn't cooperate. Why is this? I would argue it's because their communication complexity was too primitive. It's because if you want to share an idea with somebody, you have to tell them in a public square, in a market. Maybe if you're literate, you can write down your idea, but you need to write, if you're creating a pamphlet, you need to write out every single copy by hand and distribute them, and that's just not efficient, it's not scalable. You can't scale communication. Therefore, the shared myths and stories that bind a society together, a community together, they were very local. And so you had local loyalties. People were loyal to their city. They weren't loyal to a wider metropolis. And this only really changed with the rise of the printing press in the 1500s, where what the printing press did is it transformed the concept of roads as information networks. Because now if you want to share an idea, you can print it. You can print thousands of copies relatively inexpensively, put them on a horse, put them in a wagon, ship them around, and boom. You now have this unbelievable unlock of being able to share information with each other, a one-to-many style communication. I can now share my idea with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people. And this was transformational for the world. It was transformational for Europe. It led directly to the 30 Years' War and the 30 years of conflict, which I think killed roughly 30% of continental Europe where it was fought. Pretty damaging stuff. But that's what happens when you unleash radical new ideas. You create chaos. But then look at the Ottoman Empire. I know I'm talking about weird esoteric history, it'll be relevant. The Ottoman Empire looked at all this chaos happening in Europe and they're like, we don't want any of that. We're going to ban this printing press. And then 300 years later, they're the sick man of Europe. They can't innovate. They don't have industry. They don't have technology because they don't have the means of communication to share those things with people. And so the printing press, mass media, that allowed shared stories to develop within larger cultural spheres. That allowed the concept of a nation state to be born, this idea that we belong to a society that extends beyond our city or our little community. And the internet, in my opinion, is the next iteration. As in, really, I think when it comes to information networks and increasing society communication complexity, I literally think you only really have 4 key drivers of change. You have roads, you have the printing press, you have the internet, and you have blockchains. I know it sounds weird, but the internet basically allowed many-to-many style communication. Now instead of me being some kind of elite figure within a media establishment, being able to print a newspaper and share my idea with millions of people, I, with some random person, can share my ideas with millions of people all over the internet. And so you have this explosion of information sharing, of ideas sharing. And much like the printing press, it's creating in a lot of chaos and a lot of disorder because there's no way of filtering the signal from the noise. There's no way of determining what is an idea good? Does it have malicious intentions? Is it being propagated by an AI or hidden interests? Is it being shared by somebody who's crazy or somebody who's educated? Nobody knows. And this is where blockchains come in, because blockchains allow you to separate the signal from the noise. It's a many-to-many style of communication, but you get to put your money where your mouth is. Blockchains aren't so much about sharing ideas as sharing and consolidating resources. Think things like decentralized autonomous organizations or DeFi protocols, where you get to choose how your resources are spent and to what end they are spent. You're already seeing this with a vast amount of public goods funding within blockchain, which is much higher than other emergent industries. You're seeing this with primitive proto-DAOs, where people can collaborate on shared goals. And my thesis is that this is going to propagate and scale massively to the point where blockchain networks are going to become a fundamental part of our infrastructure, with our financial infrastructure in the world. And they're going to be used by individuals, not just for money, but also for governance. And they're one of the things that's going to allow us to calm the chaos of the internet, and actually allow people to really distinguish their voices and opinions and act more constructively instead of existing within a sea of information noise. Okay, so that's a bit of a high level, okay, why do I think blockchain matters? Because I think it's going to create another one of these unlocks where society is going to be able to achieve consensus around complicated ideas more efficiently. And for that, we need privacy. For anything we're doing, we need privacy. And why is that? So before the why, the what. What do I mean by privacy technology? I don't mean things like token mixers. I don't mean things like the really, really basic things like, oh, I can send a cryptocurrency balance and hide what I'm interacting with. I mean things like this. I want to be able to go to a smart contract, and I want to be able to say, hello, my name is Zachary James Williamson. I am a British citizen. I live in London. I am 36 years old. I am a software engineer and an entrepreneur. And I am single, and I have no children. I want to be able to say things like that. And I want a smart contract to be able to understand that information and use it to determine transaction flows about like, whether I can transact within a financial ecosystem, whether I have governance rights within a DAO. Have I made contributions to a certain project that gives me influence in it? All of this stuff requires private information, because within a transparent blockchain today, I can't put my passport details on chain or social security numbers, because that leaks information about who I am. I dox myself. To give another example, would you want to go to a cash machine and take out money from it if it screamed out to the entire street your bank balance? Probably not. You probably might just walk a couple of minutes and use a different cash machine. And so privacy technology is being able to prove these statements cryptographically using zero-knowledge proofs, being able to take any arbitrary amount of information, data, and perform computations on it whilst keeping that input data private. It can be used for private identity technology, attestations. Basically, it's trust infrastructure. And it's a little bit of a subversion of the traditional blockchain paradigm, because with traditional blockchains, everyone talks about trustlessness. I do not need to trust you to transact with you. What this technology is enabling, it's really enabling a situation where I can much more easily and rapidly gain trust in you. Like, I can trust you. It's not that I don't have to trust you. It's that I know things about you that are important to the action that I'm trying to achieve. So, why privacy? I want to ask a question here. And this is a question that's been burrowing its way into my mind for the last 6 years. And that is, where is Web3's fundamental value sourced from? Where's all the money coming from? You know, where's all the hundreds of billions of dollars that are trading around crypto? Where's it fundamental? Like, where's the fundamental level? What's the source of this value? And oh, hang on. So there is really only 2 sources, in my opinion. There's the economic value of consensus within a blockchain network, and there's dollar-backed stablecoins, and there is nothing else. By economic value in consensus, I mean how much are people willing to pay to get a transaction on chain and get a testable, truthful record of events. As in, if I'm sending Bitcoin, how much am I willing to pay to ensure that the Bitcoin network processes that transaction? And dollar-backed stablecoins are things like USDC. If the price of Ethereum, for example, went to 0, every single token on Ethereum, every single one would go to 0, with the exceptions of USDC and USDT. And so, in my opinion, the fundamental value of those tokens, of all those abstracted protocols and all that innovation, it comes from the same source. It comes from economic consensus. And in my opinion, this is weak. It's weak because what's missing from that is real-world assets, as in the hundreds of trillions of dollars that flow through our traditional financial systems every single day, probably day. It's real-world assets, it's mortgages, it's bonds, it's property, it's intellectual property, it's consumer goods. It's this vast array of assets that we're transacting with in the real world. They do not touch the blockchain. And there's a reason for this, and that's because you don't have privacy technology. Let's say I want to create a land registry where on-chain, where people's land ownership is recorded, and you can trade around land programmatically. Well, that would be very nice, very efficient, much better than the existing systems, where often in a lot of countries they're drowning in corruption. But the problem with that is, well, if you do that, then who owns the land is public information, and not just that, but all of the compliance requirements you need to validate that that person can legitimately own that land is also public information, and that is too much public information. But with privacy tech, things change. And I came into this from, not from the academic research side, I came into it from the product and finance side. My original startup was trying to do syndicated loans on Ethereum, mid-market corporate debt, basically a boring TradFi system. And we had customers lined up, we had investment from the industry, but what we didn't have was privacy, which meant that we couldn't use Ethereum as a viable network for this type of application. And that's why we created Aztec, is to get that privacy working. And so how do we pierce this Web3 bubble? How do we break out of this casino that we exist in, where the only fundamental value is from economic consensus? How do we get value from other sources, other types of economic activity within our lives? In my opinion, it's pretty straightforward. Step one, you need to be able to interface Web3 with Web2. You need to get data from Web2 into Web3, into smart contracts. And you need to do it with the absolute minimum levels of trust, so that you preserve the composability of a blockchain network, which is, in my opinion, one of its fundamental value propositions. You need to do things like solve account abstraction using Web2 authorization. So instead of having a specific Web3 public-private key pair, I want to be able to transact with my Web3 account by signing in with Google or Apple. And I want to be able to prove data provenance without showing personal data. I want to be able to present data on a blockchain and show where it came from and prove that that it's accurate without leaking personal information. So things like social media profiles, basic things like how do you do basic Sybil resistance for an airdrop? Well, if you need to prove that you have a social media account with over 100 followers, that gives you some small level of protection. Once you've been able to interface with Web2 systems, then you can start to link accounts to identities. You can link personal data to a Web3 account. For example, you can link passport information to a Web3 account. So you can prove with the transaction that you're a citizen of South Korea. And with this, you can unlock decentralized applications, DeFi, that interface with the real world in ways that require compliance, where you can perform the types of checks and balances that a traditional legal system requires in order for financial applications to be compliant. And you can do that in a decentralized way, in a permissionless way. I want to be able to create a decentralized exchange that trades real-world assets, say mortgages, where I can interact with that service and buy and sell and trade without some middleman involved, some private data custodian. I want to be able to personally prove all the information that's required for that service using zero-knowledge cryptography. And once you have this, once you can link accounts to identities so that you're no longer just a string of random hex characters, you are who you are on chain. I am Zachary Williamson on chain, I'm not OX33B. And you can interface with Web2 systems, then you can establish meaningful digital sovereignty. And this is, in my opinion, one of the harder parts because it's not technological. The idea that if I have a digital record on a blockchain that can act as a legal claim on property that will be backed up by courts of law. In my opinion, this is going to happen in 5 years. There are going to be several major developed economies in 5 years that will do this. So how do you build the missing link? Well, you need a ZK program. Well, okay, so I'm going to have to speed through this. So this is what we've been building for the last 8 years. So we have a programming language, Noir. Go to www.noir-lang.org. Start playing with it today. Really easy to use. It allows you to write a computer program in a high-level Rust-like language that gets compiled down into ZK, so you can hide information. On top of that, you need a private blockchain that uses that language as the execution environment. So you have a distributed ledger with distributed private state that you can use to record assets, ownership, and you use the ZK programming language to basically, as your smart contract programming language. And then you need state-of-the-art advanced cryptography underneath it all to power it, so to make it efficient. That took us 8 years of research. So, okay, I'm pretty much out of time. Privacy tech is being used to build the future of Web3 today. This isn't just an abstracted thing. These are all applications that are being built with Noir today. They're things like being able to do payments, like trustless peer-to-peer on and offboarding into Web3. I give you US dollars, you give me USDC, there's no intermediaries involved. It's things like ZK passports, being able to use the e-signatures, digital chips in your passport to prove citizenship within a blockchain platform. It's things like Anoncast, where you can post on social media anonymously without really revealing who you are. Like, these are things that are being built today in the real world. So the future's bright. Ethereum is going to be cypherpunk again, and it's going to require privacy technology. You know, we are going to create a world where distributed privacy tech will be used to develop systems and protocols and products that really increase human agency. They allow you to spend your own money and your own assets however you see fit without having to trust intermediaries and middlemen that don't have your interests at heart. We're building human-centric networks, not agentic AI networks, where the humans are their own agents, they can act autonomously on their own without help from others, and they can distinguish their own actions and their own ideas and their own spending habits from the sea of AI-generated content that we are being assaulted with today. Anyway, that's me. Thank you very much.